Jaguar and Porsche, two brands who can both lay claim to a legitimate sports car heritage. Both have produced legendary and iconic models, and both have won the famous Le Mans 24-hour endurance race on multiple occasions. Then in 2002, of course, Porsche caused a right old stir when it introduced its first SUV, the Cayman. Then 12 years later, slightly less controversially, it introduced this, the Macan. And in 2016, after years, it was saying it would never build an SUV, that it didn't want to tread on the toes of sister company Land Rover. Jaguar introduced this, the F-Pace. But which of these SUVs is most intimately intertwined with its brand's sporty DNA? Okay, so the F-Pace and Macan aren't brand new, but these versions are. The F-Pace is fitted with Jaguar's new Ingenium 2-litre 4-cylinder turbo engine to create the most affordable petrol variant yet. The Macan is not only the cheapest petrol version yet, but is also the most attainable model in a Porsche showroom. Take a look at the head-to-head stats. These are two vehicles that couldn't be more perfectly matched. There's a relatively tiny price gap. Both are 2-litre turbo 4-cylinders. The engine outputs are similar. And there is a difference in the gearbox type, but both are all-wheel drive. If you're still a member of the anti-SUV brigade, you may as well sign up to the Save the Dodo campaign. It's a lost cause, you just got to deal with it. You don't have to be a member of Mensa either to work out why every manufacturer and his dog is building an SUV these days. The SUV boom has been going on so long now, they've actually overtaken passenger car sales. Now, if we take Jaguar as a specific example first, the F-Pace, 964 sales to the end of August 2017, against total Jaguar sales, 1,888. That's about half the company's sales. Then we scroll down to Porsche, and we have the Macan, 1,820 sales out of a total of 3,455. That means the Macan outsells the 911, the Boxster, the Cayenne, the Cayman and the Panamera combined. Price tags from circa $80,000 undoubtedly help their appeal. And it's worth noting that these variants cost between $35,000 and $40,000 less than their cheapest sports car siblings. Attractive styling probably doesn't hurt either. The F-Pace in particular looks properly sporty. With its long bonnet, elongated side glass and swept-back shape, the Jaguar looks like it's doing 200 km per hour standing still. And as we're called Car Advice, we will quickly cover off the practical side of things, even if that's not our primary focus today. So, inside the Jag, there's generous legroom in the rear seat and plenty of boot space. The perception of quality is good, if not quite on the same level as the Porsche, and some of the features you can see aren't standard. The wider format touchscreen and virtual instrument cluster, for example, are optional. Thankfully, the wraparound dash design that creates a nice cockpit feel to the cabin is inclusive. The 2-litre is the latest member of Jaguar Land Rover's Ingenium family, and it's a welcome addition, because until now the only petrol you could get was a high-performance V6. The only 4 cylinders were diesels, and they don't necessarily have the best reputation right now. And it's a pleasantly flexible engine. You've got maximum torque, 365 newton meters, kicking in from just above idle at 1200 RPM. There is a bit of turbo lag down low, so we're just going to switch it to dynamic mode. There we go, now we've got a angry red rev counter coming up in the center display. That's more like it, much more responsive. However, the F-Pace 25T itself is not too shabby, 0 to 100 in the claimed 6.8 seconds. That's not bad for a vehicle just over 4.7 metres in length and one that weighs nearly 1.8 tonnes. The V6 powered S model is still our driver's pick of the F-Pace range, but the 25T gives you the same superbly fluid and direct steering. And the advantage of the new 4-cylinder engine is that you've also got 100 kilos less mass and less weight over the front end, so this F-Pace tips into corners really nicely. Now you're going to notice some body roll here, very noticeable, but it actually complements the handling. Reminds me very much of a Ford Focus ST. You can get this F-Pace in a pure rear-wheel drive version. This is the all-wheel drive. It's still rear-wheel drive biased. In normal driving, you've got about 90% torque going to the rear wheels. And here we go, we're coming to a tight corner here, down to second. On the gas early. There you go, you can feel the rear end coming a little into play. Not as much as when you've got the more powerful V6, but look at that, oh, that's just beautiful. Very adjustable on the throttle, and again, coming out. We've also got torque vectoring. That's nibbling at the brakes just to help resist understeer, which it does so brilliantly. The Jaguar F-Pace 25T then has set a high marker. What has the Porsche got in response? The Macan is based on the original Audi Q5, though you wouldn't necessarily guess from either the exterior or interior. Visually, it fits neatly into the Porsche family. No fancy flourishes, no excessive creases, it's all about the curves and overall shape. You could say it looks more like an oversized hatchback than an SUV. Inside, it's a button fest, as the Macan is yet to adopt Porsche's new digital age dash seen in the latest Panamera. Maybe we'll see some more changes as part of the model's 2018 facelift, though the cabin isn't yet feeling its age. With less space in both the boot and the rear seat, the Porsche can't beat the Jaguar in the practicality stakes. But today, it doesn't need to, as this contest is all about performance and dynamics. We weren't expecting the four-cylinder Macan to come to Australia. The company keeps talking about not being a volume brand, but that seems to be the target with an $80,000 Porsche, but not many buyers are going to be complaining about that. Now, it's not to be confused with the flat 4 turbo that is in the Boxster and Cayman 718 twins. This is actually an Audi design unit from the likes of the A4, the Q5, and also the Volkswagen Golf GTI. And it even sounds and feels like a GTI engine in many ways. Though it can sound actually better, and I'll press this sport button and that engages an optional sports exhaust. It's about $5,400, should perhaps be standard, but it is worth having because the Macan sounds brilliant with it. Oh, that sounds good. Oh. The PDK transmission, well, really just remains the best of that dual clutch auto breed. Lightning fast gear changes, so much faster than the Jaguars. Now that just helps to make this whole drivetrain just feel so much more engaging. Sorry, I just want to listen to those revs again. The revs are just under 7,000 RPM and you just never want them to die out. It just sounds brilliant. I think this is the first time I've driven a Porsche press car without the optional sports chrono fitted, so there's no lap timer or analog clock at the top of the dash. And that also means you don't have the most aggressive Sports Plus mode. So 0 to 100 is just 6.7 seconds rather than 6.5. Now that makes it fractionally quicker than the Jaguar, but if your neighbour's got an Audi Q5 2-litre TFSI in the driveway, they can boast that their car is quicker by about half a second. The Porsche's urban ride on its standard steel-sprung suspension can also be jiggly and lumpy, though the F-Pace isn't always perfectly comfortable either. Based on our experience of other Macans, we would recommend ticking option boxes for adaptive dampers or air suspension. Where Porsche's engineering genius does come into the equation, however, is handling. The Macan is so much more dynamically accomplished than the old Audi Q5, even the new Audi Q5. It's so planted, minimal body roll, much less than the F-Paces. It just feels like you're driving an oversized hatch, and a very sporty one at that. It's so grippy, adjustable. Oh, fantastic. This is such a great car to drive. The steering is an interesting one because Porsche typically develops some of the best steering in the world, but it's not quite the case here with the Macan, at least in this base model 4-cylinder. It's an electromechanical setup just like the F-Paces, but the electric assistance is much more noticeable and it could just spoil the flow of the steering a little bit. But there is a meatiness and directness to the steering that is particularly suited to this sporty driving context. Look, the F-Pace is no more an F-Type on stilts than the Macan is a high-riding Cayman, but both the Jaguar and the Porsche do put the sports into sports utility vehicle. But which one to take for that long, scenic, windy way home? Well, the Jaguar is more fun to drive than your average SUV, but it's got to be the Porsche. With that flatter cornering attitude and the more dynamic of the two 4-cylinder turbo engines, it just gets you closest to that sports car experience.